Hello, I'm Nancy Silverton, and I'm going to be cooking for you today a savory bread pudding. I'm going to be using plenty baby arugula and plenty baby kale, along with a crusty loaf of whole wheat bread. I'm going to start off by slicing my bread, and I'm going to toast it. I'm using a whole wheat loaf today, but I think the most important part is that it's a well-chosen, crusty loaf, one that you love eating. So slice it into 1/4-inch slices. I'm going to toast them to sort of hurry up the process, but you could also just slice up your bread, leave it out overnight uncovered to kind of harden up on its own. All right, so I'm gonna lay this out on a sheet pan. If you happen to have a oven rack that fits into your sheet pan, go ahead and use that because it allows the air to flow underneath and both sides of my bread will get crispy. Otherwise, I would say halfway through toasting, flip the bread over so it gets equally toasted on the other side. All right, let me slip that into the oven. I'm going to set the loaf aside and let's continue with the recipe. Okay, now I need to reduce my chicken stock. In the recipe, I'm calling for a store-bought, low-sodium chicken stock, but certainly if you're ambitious enough to make your own chicken stock, please use that. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to use a low-sodium chicken stock that I'm going to be reducing by half, and I have that going on my stove right now. Now let's get our vegetables ready for the bread pudding. I'm going to be using onions, leeks, celery, garlic, and some thyme and sage. So for the leeks, let's start with those. First of all, you want to cut off the dark green ends. I only want to use the white and pale green part of the leek. But I also don't want to throw away these flavorful ends of the leek. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse them. Leeks are very, very dirty when you start to open up the leaves. I'll rinse it. I'm going to throw it in my chicken stock to help flavor my chicken stock. With the remaining leek, I'm going to cut it in half. I'm going to slice it into slices on the bias, about 1/2 inch thick. And these also need to be rinsed under cold water. All right, now my celery. I've got a whole head of celery. Just gonna trim off the end. And I'm gonna take some of these nice inner leaves, super flavorful. I love them. I'm gonna actually use them to flavor my vegetables. Now, ordinarily when I use celery, when I use it raw, I should say, I always peel my celery because it tends to be very stringy. But in this case, I'll be cooking it, so I'm not going to peel my celery. Again, on the bias, into thin slices. Add that to my leeks. use the ends of my celery just as I use the ends of the leeks to flavor my stock. Lastly, the onion. Now, I'm very particular the way that I slice onions. And this is kind of a little technique that I've been doing for years. I think that people make the mistake when they cut onion in either just peeling it or slicing it in half and then kind of just chopping it up. And the problem is you never get even slices and they don't cook evenly. And I find really the best way to do it is to cut the onion in half through the root and then in quarters again, and peel that onion skin off and then actually peel away the petals of the onion like this, and then stack them 2 high and slice them lengthwise. And this way it really ensures that all your onions are the same width and thickness. Let me grab my bread out of the oven. It should be ready. Yep. It needs to be toasty, but not too hard, but dried out. Great. All right, let me finish the other half of an onion. All right, and now my garlic. And I'm gonna use a mandolin to slice it. Not necessary, but certainly easier. You can thinly slice the garlic, but I find using a mandolin to be really the quickest way to do it. The only thing you wanna be careful of is obviously slicing your hands. So pay attention. And stop just as you feel the very beginning of the blade, which is there. Great. So I've got my garlic, my celery, my onions and leeks. Let's go over to the stove and cook them. Let's get cooking. I've got my celery, my onions, my garlic, my leeks. Oh, I've got my plenty greens right here. So I'm gonna be using the plenty arugula and the plenty kale. Both of them I love. I love their dark green color. I love their vibrant, strong, spicy flavor. It's gonna be perfect for my bread pudding. I'm going to start out by softening my onions and celery and garlic and leeks in some olive oil. I've got my reduced chicken stock that I kind of fortified with my leek ends and celery. Season with a little kosher salt. And I'm going to soften that over a lowish flame. I don't want my vegetables to color. Let me add some fresh sprigs of thyme and fresh sage. Once my vegetables are softened, which they are, I'm going to deglaze the pan with a little sherry wine vinegar. Gives it a nice brightness. Turn up my heat. I'll reduce that. All right, once that vinegar is reduced, I'm going to add about a cup of chicken stock. All right, and now I'm going to start adding my greens. If it seems a little dry, add just a little bit more of your stock. Here's the kale. Now re-season all those greens. Turn the heat down to low. Keep it covered for about 20 minutes until completely soft. Great. My greens and vegetables are soft. Don't forget to remove the thyme sprigs and the sage. Yeah, I got it now. All right, and now we're ready to build our bread pudding. I've got my bread. I've got my softened vegetables and greens. I have my fortified chicken stock. I've got my pan to build my bread pudding into. I've got some fresh thyme. I got some butter. I got everything. All right, so basically, the configuration of your pan is going to dictate how you cut the bread. We're going to have 3 layers of bread, 2 layers of greens and vegetables, and all softened by our delicious chicken stock. So I'm just kind of getting an idea of the shape of my bread, fitting it in there like a puzzle. Yep. All right, let's start moistening this pudding. With our chicken stock. And by the way, if you wanted to make this totally vegetarian, which you can, use a vegetable stock. It doesn't have to be a chicken stock. All right, and press down to make sure that the bread has absorbed all the liquid. All right, a whole even layer of our greens and vegetables. Okay, I can tell that my bread has absorbed all of the stock. So I'm ready for my second layer of bread. Let's press down. If your bread is overly dried out or overly toasted, you may have to let that bread sit for a while to really absorb all of the stock. If you don't have enough stock and your bread is too dry, your pudding will be too dry as well. All right, finish with the remaining greens. And for the top, you want to just break up the bread and kind of form a cobblestone pattern on top, which gives the final bread pudding, the bake of it, a much better look than just the slabs of bread like we put inside. So fit that all in. Here we go. And then let's pour the stock all over the top. Press it down to absorb. Again, make sure the bread is super soft before you pop it into the oven. I'm going to finish it with a little flaky Malden sea salt. Some sprigs of fresh thyme, which is going to leave a really pretty pattern when baked, and also give it a little boost in flavor. Dot it with some unsalted butter. And I'm going to pop it into a 375-degree oven for really, depending upon the size of the pan, anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes.